Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today, we will be discussing The Awakened Family by Dr. Shefali. I feel like mine is coming up backwards. I can't tell. It's backwards on my screen.
No, it
shows right.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we are loving this book. I think I can speak for all of us, right? Mm-hmm. We are loving this book. Dr. Shefali is brilliant and wise, and she has so much to teach all of us. And so we wanted to get on here and start discussing this. We will be discussing this book every 2 weeks. Today, 2 weeks from then, 2 weeks from then, 2 weeks from then, for 4 total weeks. So we hope you can join us. All right, so you want to get started?
If you haven't purchased the book and you would like to, as Sam, I see you say you need to get that one, we highly recommend it. It's just transformational. And I've only read the first 40 pages.
And if you
love to start with
Well, before you start, if you want to purchase the book, you can find it at drshefali.com. And she has all the links to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and wherever else you might find the book. And you can get it in hardback. You can get it in audiobook, ebook. There are many different formats of the book, so you can get whichever one works for you.
And all of your closest friends.
Yes.
Definitely a giftable resource for sure.
Yes. Everyone you know. Okay. I'd love to share from page 1 the mandate of the Awakened Family, which I think we all can agree is incredible and just a great way to start this conversation. Put on my glasses to be able to see the words. The time for a new beginning has arrived, where family is no longer the chain that binds us, but it is the earth from which we blossom and the sky we learn to fly. No matter how the family unit looks, it begins with the parent and child, a relationship that holds the energy of the sun, with power to break patterns and resurrect the spirit. The awakened family waits for no one. It begins to heal right here, right now. It recognizes that these sacred bonds can revolutionize the planet. And that is what we're here to discuss today.
Fabulous.
Oh, that was awesome.
Before we get into the meat of the book, I want to point out that Dr. Shefali has such an eloquent way of stringing words together. It's just like art. It's like poetry. Yeah. She's got such a beautiful way of articulating her wisdom.
Yeah.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, Heather.
Thanks for joining.
I also want to say that she takes us into a beautiful journey, one that is loving and peaceful and empowering, because she really helps us connect to our deeper self, to our true self. And in that process, we automatically connect to our kids' deeper self and true self. So the nature of the relationships built in the family with the understanding of her work is something that is short of miraculous. It is absolutely pristine.
Yes.
And the thing that I noticed in conjunction with you, Patricia, is that I've read a million parenting books, and what she offers is intuitively what's inside of me. So it's very affirming and healing. I find her book to be healing with every page, because it doesn't matter where we're starting our journey from. She's meeting us right there every step along the way. And I love her humbleness of this is a living experience, and it's not something that she is just theorizing. She's going through it too. And, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing is that no matter what challenge that is in front of us, the stories that are coming alive as we read through, page after page, are all things that, I'm sure that we can all relate to, as well as many people have joined us and anybody else who's touching the book. They're all very normal, life experiences in raising our children. No matter what age you're at, something always seems to strike us in, what she's saying. And I think, as you said, Brigid, no matter where you are in the journey, what age you're dealing with, what challenge you're dealing with, it speaks to every single step of the way, how you can move forward in a different way by turning inward, by looking at ourselves and not looking at fixing the child that's in front of us every single moment of every single day, and controlling that child.
Yes.
Yeah. It's definitely a path to freedom and to authenticity, to much more peace. And it's nice because we get to be human and really face our limitations, but at the same time, we find the path to our strength. So instead of feeling like failures all the time, which sometimes that's the feeling when we're raising children, is having the impression that our child's behavior is a reflection on how good or bad a parent we are. What this gives us is the opportunity to really parent from who we are, and be humble and heal so many things in our past. This first part of the book that we're discussing today talks a lot about how our reactions, where our reactions come from. Why are we so triggered with the challenges that our kids bring with their behaviors? Why do we react? Why do we explode? Or why do we feel so lost at times? And so it's also a way to go back in the past and really heal those experiences and come to peace with them and not let them interfere in our daily lives with our kids. And it ends up really reflecting in every area of our lives, not only, but definitely in the home. That's where it's more important.
One thing that I was thinking about as I read this book, when I read The Conscious Parent, when I first found Dr. Shefali's work, I read through it and it felt like she was pulling words out of my soul. That's how deeply her wisdom resonated with me. And so instantly I was hooked from the first page, and I devoured that book, and I devoured Out of Control, her second book. But I found myself unsure of how to take that theory, that beautiful, elegant theory, and bring it down to the ground in my daily interactions with my kids. So when I then went, after reading those two books, I kind of spent about a year trying different things and experimenting. Well, is this what conscious parenting looks like on the ground? Is this approach, does it fit conscious parenting? Am I more conscious now? So I just tried all these different things. And one of the common questions that Dr. Shefali fields all the time with the conscious parent is, yes, this is all well and good, but how do I do it? Because we in this society are such a doing society. And I've heard her say for years, there's nothing to do. There's no formula, there's no recipe. And so it's just a way of being. And I know when I was a new follower of Dr. Shefali, I couldn't make sense of that. And I know other people can't make sense of that, because until you get it, you don't get it. But once you get it, you understand. So how do you get from I don't get it to I get it? How do you awaken? How do you go through that process? And I remember when we were chatting with Dr. Shefali in Chicago when we were all there together for the Zen Parenting radio conference. And she said, I wrote The Conscious Parent, and I felt like I put everything I knew into that book, and I had explained everything. And then everybody came to me and said, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand. How do I do it? And so I wrote another one, and I felt like I put everything in that one. And then people still didn't get it. And then she said, this one is her proudest accomplishment because she feels like she really explained it very clearly this time. And so when I read this part 1, because we're talking about part 1 of the book today, right? Let's even find out what part 1 is called. A New Awakening. Part 1 is called A New Awakening. So when I read that, I actually tried to read it, like split my brain in half and try to read it as the parent that I am and the professional that I am with the consciousness and the awareness that I have. But I also tried to read it as a beginner, as someone who's just come to her work, to see if it makes any more sense to me. And it's very difficult to try to unlearn what you understand already. But I think, from my perspective, I think it is clearer. I think she has articulated the concepts a little bit more down to the earth practically in this book. What do you guys think?
I agree.
I agree with you, Erin.
Brigid?
I think, sorry,
sir.
No, I was just going to say that, Erin, when you're speaking about understanding the practicality of conscious parenting, what does that mean? I think one of the interesting things that's coming to my awareness right now is that Dr. Shefali never tells anyone what to do. What she says is, trust who you are and you know what to do. So it's really about empowering people that are learning and awakening to this concept, as opposed to all of the other materials that are out there that tell you this is how you do it. And if you don't do it this way, this is going to be the result. Now you need to go to here and find more resources. And for her, it's about, you have to go right here, go back inside and reconnect here. And I just think that that is one of the most remarkable qualities of the teaching.
I agree with you, Brigid. And I think, what that makes me think of is her conversation or her writings in the beginning about how we are so societally driven, by cultural standards and cultural shoulds and what we expect of our children and how our children should achieve, succeed, and be in all these sports, doing. And so, I loved how she shared her awakening and how she sat in silence. And that was when she realized, that this was not necessary to raise her child in this method, in the craziness of doing and following what societal, realms are telling us to do. And even, worldwide. She spoke about how worldwide we all have, these same societal pressures that are on us as parents. And therefore, we are just parenting through, what we're being told we should and should not do. Same thing with the thousands of books that we read that tell us what we should and should not do. So, I love how she brings silence into the realm of really becoming more aware of who you are, what your beliefs are, and how you can understand your triggers more when your children are triggering you through their interactions with you. Asking, she brought up a number of questions that she asked her clients as a way to explain very easily and thoroughly to all of us reading it how important it is to look at where that's coming from. It's not the child's behavior. It's what the child is, their behavior is bringing up for us or in us from our own past. And so it was very clear that silence is a real key to me, in the first step of becoming more awakened, more aware, more in touch with our own internal feelings and what was going on.
Absolutely.
So how about we explain a little bit about the ego part of it This part one, she talks a lot about ego, and just tagging along with what you're saying, Sue. So that we have, just imagine that we have, there are different forces inside us, right? One are forces that are coming at us every single day, and you know, the books that we're reading and the ideas that are just flooding our minds, and the conversations with other parents, and this is how they do it. And so we're all swimming in a lot of information, right? That we are receiving consciously, right? That we're seeking and learning. And then there is all the information that we carry inside in our subconscious mind that comes from our programming, from our early childhood, behaviors that we developed and learned from however our childhood was. So many of our reactions are either reactions to wounds that we've experienced in the past, or reactions that we learned. You know, we were parented a certain way. How many times? I'm pretty sure this is like across the board. How many times have you sounded like your mother? How many times have you reacted like your father? Never. And this is not, right? This has happened to me so many times too. And this is not to blame them, because they reacted like their parents. You know, this is a programming that until we are aware of it, it really drives our lives. Mm-hmm. So what happens is that, let's say you had a difficult childhood, and even if you didn't, you know, there are situations that really wound us, right? When we are little, we come in as pure essence. Just look at children playing in the playground, completely pure and shining. That is a human being that is still unaffected by the world, by the toxic ideas or environment, right? That is pure. Mm-hmm. So just imagine that child with a soft brain receiving the anger of a parent, the overreaction, or living in an environment that is troubled, where parents are arguing all the time. The concepts that the child is building of the world are happening right there. Mm-hmm. And also the concepts that child is building of herself is happening right there. A parent reacts in a very angry way. The child will think she did something wrong. There's something wrong with her, right? So this happened to all of us. You know, at some point we thought there's something wrong with me, and that didn't feel safe, and we want to protect it, right? So every time that wound is touched in a way, every time we live a situation that opens that wound again, our first reaction is to protect it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to pause here because I already spoke a lot. I don't know if you want to add something, or if we can continue.
I actually found a passage that I wanted to share. Yeah. And it kind of, I think, dovetails into what you were just saying, Patricia. So a big piece of this book is dealing with fear.
What page are you on, Erin?
Page 8. It's dealing with fear and how fear shows up. And we, as you lovely ladies know, we did a 6-week exploration of fear and all the different ways that it shows up and what it looks like and the effect it has on us and all that kind of stuff. So here's one of my favorite first quotes, even though, I mean, the whole, I'm sure, you know.
It's all quotable.
I'm going to run out of ink in my pen before I'm done the book. So she says, I propose throughout this book that most of the problems we experience in children stem from fear, which is a characteristic of the ego. Our fearfulness is extremely detrimental to our children and ultimately the cause of much of their undesirable behavior. At the same time, I will show you that this fear is baseless, and that far from needing to be afraid, we ought to realize that we have every reason to believe in our children and trust in their future, because we live in a universe that is intelligent in its purpose, co-creating life's circumstances with us, each circumstance designed for our growth and expansion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that word expansion is vital to understanding everything that you're learning, is that we have the ability to always open more and to grow more.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this. I highlighted this one from page 9. It's from this false mindset, which is fearfully focused on survival, Patricia, going to your point, that we do most of our parenting. It is this, our false self, that creates the first seeds of disconnect with our children. It takes us away from what is to the what if or what should be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's daily interactions in many arenas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you're wondering,
we're just dumping our fear onto our children. Sorry.
Yes.
We're just dumping those fears, and they're absorbing them, and their behavior is a reaction of the fear that they feel within us. Mm-hmm. And, I think, as we all know, anything that we're feeling, anxiety, fear, excitement, whatever it might be, our children pick up on that, whether we say it or not. They know us, they get to know us very early, young ages, and they can absorb or feel, or have insight into whatever's going on for us.
Absolutely.
So if we're living in fear, they're feeling it, and each and every day.
Yeah. And they're reacting to it as well.
Yes.
So, maybe you are already on an awakened journey where you are aware of these two forces, your authentic self and your conditioning, your beliefs, your ego. But if you're not, it might be a little difficult to understand. How do you know when you're being triggered? How do you know that it wasn't the child who misbehaved and therefore justifies your reaction, right? Because it really feels, when our kids are acting out, it really feels like it's them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so there are a few things that you can notice, and in the book she explains it well, but I think that what I want is to just use a simple analogy of what happens when they are misbehaving, okay? And why it feels so personal. So let's imagine that you skinned your knee, right? All of us have memories of what that is, right? You fall and you skin your knee, and then you have to go and wash it or take a shower, right? All of a sudden, the water that was so neutral becomes an agent of pain to that wound. You don't want to wash it. You don't want to wet your skinned knee. You don't want the shower. Now it's the water that is going to cause the pain, right? Now, water in itself doesn't cause the pain. It's when it touches the wound that is open that it hurts. Mm-hmm. So when we're interacting with our kids, some of their reactions, which are completely normal and of who they are, just they're reacting just like we do, they touch our wounds. What's really hurting is the wound. It's not the child causing the wound. So that's why we need to pay attention and think about that wound. What am I thinking right now? What am I feeling? And remember that the child is just that agent who's neutral, just like the water. It's not her fault.
That is a beautiful analogy, Patricia. I love that. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to chat with my clients tomorrow and steal your analogy.
Feel free to use it.
I love it. And it reminds me of what Dr. Shefali said. Like, you asked a question, you said, how do we know when we're feeling triggered? How do we know it's our child or us? And she asked a good question. Is it them or is it me? And the answer is always, it's me. It's never them. That's what I was thinking in my head when you asked that question. And then you brought this analogy of the water. And I love it because it is so true. It is never our kids. I don't care if they're having a meltdown, a temper tantrum, they're not sharing, they stole their brother's toy, or they won't brush their teeth, or they keep getting out of bed every 5 seconds. It doesn't matter what they're doing. It's never about them. They are just being themselves in the moment. They're just moving through the world how they are naturally. And it's us who is bringing something inside to that situation that is not neutral at all. And that's kind of what I'm thinking about when you say that.
And sometimes it's not even an open wound or a wound that we may be aware of. Sometimes it is simply control. Like, we don't feel like we are in control of that moment, which is illusionary, but that's the trigger. So sometimes it isn't always a pain point. It's just not having control within ourselves in that moment to know that we can handle whatever's coming at us.
And we're taught by society to, as the parent, to be in control. And, we are the parent. So, we should be as a hierarchy, so to speak, as opposed to, how Shefali, I'm sure we'll talk later in the book about, walking along together side by side with our children as their ushers and their support system, not, as need to control. One thing also in line with what you said, Brigid, is, not only control is an issue, but just when we look at the triggers that we have, they're buttons. Many parents say, well, my kids push my buttons all day long. And I remember Dr. Shefali saying, at some point in a conversation with her, if we don't have buttons, our kids won't push them. So we have all these red buttons. That's what I envision. We have all these red buttons that are, pushed, and we just spring to a different level of emotion when that button is pushed. And the buttons are on the outside and the inside, because they're not going to get to the inside if they're not, first pushed on the outside, like the skinned knee,
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
That's so true. I have two other things that I want to read from the book on page 12 and 13. And I think this really, these two passages really describe why this work is so important. She says on page 12, when children aren't given the space to assert their authentic voice, but are drowned out by the roar of our parental agendas, they grow up anxious and depressed. Many of our young people are so deprived of our acceptance, of simply being seen for who they are, that they self-harm in a variety of ways, getting drunk, taking drugs, engaging in inappropriate sexual relations, even cutting themselves. All of these are cries for our acceptance. They are manifestations of a deep yearning to be seen, validated, and known. And so I think that really is a very good encapsulated statement of why this is so important. Our kids are stressed out and they are pressured. They have things pushing on them from every angle, from home to school to sports to getting into the right college or getting into any college and having to volunteer 2,700 hours a year and be on 3 sports and be in every activity and get straight A's. I mean, the pressure on them is enormous. And if we as their parents can just relieve our piece of the pressure, I think it can have a monumental positive impact on our kids. But when we say that, something like that, I can feel the fear rising in the parents who watch this recording or this live broadcast. And I can see them thinking, I'm running out of time. I've done it the wrong way for so long. How do I do it faster? I don't know. I'm stressed. I'm worried. I'm pressured. I'm nervous. So she comes on page 13 and says, to parent consciously doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice to become aware of how our ego seduces us. Thankfully, even small steps toward increased awareness can result in monumental shifts in the quality of our relationship with our children. Every step we take toward increased consciousness brings us exponentially closer to our child's heart and spirit. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to put that little bit of hope into our discussion because this work is seriously important, but I don't want to stress parents out thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to just turn this whole boat around? Tiny little baby steps towards becoming more aware of how we're thinking, more aware of how we're feeling, more aware of our interactions with our kids, why we chose the statement that we did. Tiny little things, little ways to connect that we didn't do before. Just all this little stuff, little tiny things will have monumental effects on them.
I think daily reflections are also really helpful. How did I do well today, and how could I do differently? And not to beat ourselves up or feel guilty. I think we've all, moved through this quite successfully in using reflections throughout our days. And we're still on a conscious parenting journey as well, each and every day. And Erin, just to kind of talk a little bit about, it's never too late. Since I started this, 4 years ago or something like that, and my oldest at that time, I guess, was 18 or 17, it's never too late, because I, am here to attest to the fact that I've seen an incredible shift and change in my relationship with her and my understanding with her, about her, who her spirit is, and how I can help, even at 18, 19, 20, 21, help her to grow and thrive in a way that suits her best, without letting my ego take over, wanting to control, each and every move she makes. So, if I can help parents to kind of take a deep breath and know that, number one, it's never too late. And secondly, like you said, Erin, baby steps, a lot of reflection, no guilt, no shaming ourselves, no beating ourselves up, just learning each and every day what we could do differently if we reflected upon how we might have reacted to a situation and what it brought up for us. That increases our awareness the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. So it's a process of building. It's, walking up those little tiny steps each and every day. And some days are better than others. We can all attest to that, right, ladies?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Especially with it being summer vacation.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Right. Putting your conscious parenting principles to good use, And I think with all of that, like really knowing that our greatest tool in our arsenal is pause. Mm-hmm. Nothing demands our immediate attention unless there is blood involved. That's my rule. So just taking a moment to say, whew, that was a little like something's going on here. And just breathe, pause and breathe before you open your mouth to respond in any way or react, that's one of the greatest small steps that I took, was just pause.
That's
also a cultural shift, Brigid. Sorry, not to jump in here, but that's also a cultural shift, because our kids have learned instant gratification. So anything they ask, anything they want, with the way we're on the internet and, all the electronics, we get everything immediately. So retraining our children that things do not, and ourselves, that we do not have to answer anything immediately. And I talk a lot about this with the parents I work with, that, nothing has to be immediate. We can give ourselves that time to process and think before we speak, and teach them the same, because what a great modeling opportunity it is for them to learn that they don't have to react to their friends or teachers or us without, some thought process and a pause. Maybe they pause when we ask a question, they walk away, and they come back later to give us that answer. We have to be able to accept that in our children as well.
Absolutely. And commend it. It's commendable.
Yeah. Agreed.
Until the fear has gone away. Until you are able to get that gut reaction and put it aside, it's better not to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And you might be wondering, so am I never going to teach my child? Am I never going to correct my child? Right? Because that's another thought that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, when fear is out of the way, wisdom comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And so does the child's wisdom. You can actually connect so clearly that you will know what is necessary. Is it time to correct, or is it time to connect? This is something Dr. Shefali talks about a lot. The other thing I want to say is that the path of consciousness, it's like an on-off button. You know, like it's a switches on. Oh my God, I'm being conscious right now. Turn around, comes the other child, button is off. You know, so the goal is not perfection.
Right.
The goal is awareness. And then there's more hope in this. You can be in the middle or almost toward the end of your unconsciousness with your child and realize, oh my God, look at what I'm doing. And you immediately turn on that switch to consciousness. It's automatic. The minute you notice that you're reacting in that moment, you're conscious. And you can pause. I have 3 kids. My oldest is 20. My boy is almost 14, and my little girl is 9. Each of them have had a different mother. And I find like I've moved towards consciousness. You know, Sylvia is the lucky one who has had a more conscious, not all the time conscious mother. And I feel like I'm working my way back up, you know, because also through consciousness, we feel more peaceful. We begin to discover ourselves in a way that is really fun and nurturing. It's really a path to love. So, you know, but it's funny because I can be talking to Sylvia in a very conscious way, and then my son comes in and asks something, and then I'm another person I feel it inside, you know, and I'm like, all right. And now our conversations here in the house are like, well, I'm sorry, I just had an unconscious moment. So can you forgive your unconscious mother? And they laugh at it, you know, so they're also learning how they're learning how to be human, and they're learning how they too can stop their reactions and really connect to their core. And I'm not teaching them that. They're learning because, you know, we can only teach what we know. So as we learn the path for ourselves, we're also opening that path for them.
But you're bringing humor, Patricia, and I think, you know, we all probably bring some sense of humor to our everyday experiences. You know, let's call them imperfections or whatever they are, because we're all imperfect. And so to be able to highlight the things we do that may not be how we wanted to react and bring humor to it, I think also creates more awareness for our children, you know, and I'm looking at this from a modeling standpoint too, because we're modeling to them how it's okay to do something wrong, yet bring attention to it and, you know, and some humor at that, and recognize in ourselves where, you know, where we misstep or where we did something that we really didn't want to. So for example, if our children are yelling at us or speaking in a tone of voice that maybe we prefer they don't, and they suddenly realize, yikes, you know, I didn't mean to speak like that. We may have modeled that in a different, you know, scenario, maybe a year before or 6 months before, and they're able to stop and, you know, reflect and kind of switch it up. Or maybe, you know, they are children, maybe they aren't aware in the middle of it, but they may come back later and, you know, apologize for the way they spoke. And I have experienced that myself with my kids. Also doing what you do, bringing humor, you know, being honest, stopping in the middle of an unconscious moment and bringing some consciousness, you know, back to it. So that human side's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And sharing what you're learning too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I share with my 20-year-old, the things, without going back into my own stuff. I don't want to make it heavy, but I talk to her and I say, there are so many things I didn't know about the mind and of reactions and what really create them. So I share with her, and I've told her that the most freeing and humbling experience is to really look into that. It's just like putting that ointment on that wound, and letting it sit there and heal. So I've noticed a change in her since I started talking more directly. And this has been, for a few years now, but now that she's older, I'm thinking, can I make up to the things that, to the past? How can I help her? Because she obviously has her triggers too. She obviously has her wounds. And so I've seen more willingness in her and self-reflect and say, Mom, I've noticed that this and this are things that really, really make me angry. And so, we've gone a little deeper to understand what that was. So I think that also the beauty of this, there is so much. The gift is so gigantic, but we can stop being victims. Mm-hmm. Instead of saying,
yes,
oh, it's because of her, or it's because of him, it's because of my parents, or even we victimize ourselves with shame and blame daily, right? All the time. You can reclaim your power, and you can say, I don't need this anymore. Mm-hmm. I have a choice. I can act from my heart and not from my fear, not from my pain. So the victim is gone. Mm-hmm. And then the people in the past who unconsciously created a lot of your discomforts, they can be released too, because they were just following the unconscious patterns that are coming from before. We're just adding to them. But really, there are certain things that we've been doing for centuries, and we're just playing them again and again and again. So we can't even blame our parents or grandparents or that teacher who was unconscious or, because they really didn't know what they were doing. They were reacting from their own wounds.
Well, and I think as we continue to move through the book together, and hopefully all of you who have joined us have some interest in purchasing the book if you haven't already, or continuing to read the book along with us if you haven't finished the book already, or whatever your case may be, as we move through in the next 6 weeks, I guess every 2 weeks on Tuesday at 10 o'clock on blab.im to talk about this incredible information and wealth of transformation, I would say, wealth of knowledge and shift into how we can become more awakened, more aware, more in touch with our own ego, because it'll always be there. It'll never go away. Mm-hmm. So we hope that, you will continue to work with us in discussing the book. And of course, you can reach out to any of us if you'd like, separately, to learn more or talk more about the Awakened Family or conscious parenting or anything. Yes. We're here for you.
And may I add, just to kind of give completeness to our opening of how to understand the process of consciousness or awakening to it. On page 38, it says, awareness requires us to hold a dual lens, one facing inward and the other outward. Most of us are raised only with the latter, so that our focus is on doing. This book is about infusing our doing with the grace and wisdom of being. We need both elements in life, the doing and the being, the behavior and the awareness behind the behavior. the action, and the insight behind it. It's at the confluence of both that true consciousness rises. The path to conscious parenting is a lived experience uncovered by a willing and committed curiosity.
That's beautiful.
So
Very
beautiful.
I love it. And there are two more quick things that I wanted to cover that are in this part one that I thought were really important. On page 30, Dr. Shefali says, if you were to ask me what I believe to be the root of conflict between parents and children, I would tell you that it's a clash of time zones. Parents are oriented to the future, to getting to wherever they imagine themselves to be going. Children, on the other hand, when left to themselves, inhabit the present. Most of the disconnection between parent and child comes down to this rupture between a life enjoyed moment by moment and a life that's focused on moving ahead.
Yes.
I think that's really important because I think a lot of struggles that parents and kids have is the parent saying, we need to do. We need to go here. You need to hurry up, get ready. We have to leave. You have to do your homework, go to practice, whatever. And the kid just wants to play Legos or read their book or whatever. And so I think that can be a challenge for parents. And that's something for our viewers to just kind of ponder when we wrap up here today. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on is this idea about conscious parenting not being the traditional mainstream way of parenting.
Thank you.
I mean, we're all working at a feverish pace trying to bring conscious parenting into the mainstream with all of our colleagues and Dr. Shefali leading the boat or leading the train. But it is not yet mainstream as much as we would like it to be. And she touches on that a little bit in this book about the old-fashioned way of parenting. And she says, if on occasion we catch a glimpse of what's wrong with the beliefs we buy into, it can be frightening. This is on page 41. We are afraid that if we did things differently, we would be ostracized. Not only does the thought of veering from the mainstream scare us, but as I mentioned a moment ago, we also fear for what will become of our children. We realize they could pay a high price at the hands of a society that has innumerable ways to punish unorthodoxy. Let's talk about the price of unorthodoxy. In fear of ostracism and isolation, we follow the way of the mainstream. In this case, the myths of what it means to be a good parent. If we believe the cost of unorthodoxy is too high for us to bear, this is an indication that we are cut off from our own inner abundance. In this case, these costs may indeed feel too burdensome. However, once we get in touch with our inherent power, we realize that it's when we follow the mainstream with blind compliance that we actually pay the highest cost, the price of authenticity. And so I want to invite our viewers to ponder that fact as well, that this way of parenting may not yet be mainstream, but the benefits that will come from parenting in this more conscious way, the improvement in your relationship with your children, and the improvement in how your children feel about themselves, their ability to tap into their inner abundance and their inner wisdom, and to become the fullest expression of who they came to this earth to be. I mean, that's what it's all about for each of us, to figure out who it is we're meant to be and then go about becoming that person every day, every step along this journey called life. And so the more conscious and aware and connected we can be to our kids, the more we can raise the next generation to be fully awake and to be in touch with who they are and to become their fullest expression.
May I end on this one paragraph that follows you, Erin, which I think symbolizes a child that's been raised in this climate. Children who grow up to be authentic will inevitably be helpful members of society because they will feel compelled to take care of their fellow beings and the planet on which they live, since this is how they treat their own heart, mind, and body. A person who honors their own being will guard the rights of others with great care.
Beautiful.
And
you know,
just think about the next, oh, sorry, Sue. I was just going to say, think about the next generation with that statement in mind. Think about the next generation guarding the rights of others. What would our world look like?
Yeah.
Yes, a global shift.
Yes. And, you know, just to take a step back, when Dr. Shefali is asked how she, I think the question is, what do you hope for your child will be? And she answers, my goal as a parent is to raise a child who is firmly rooted in who she is, certain of her inherent worth, able to express herself with authenticity and be grounded in her relationship with me, the parent. And so we raise our children this way, and they are tapped into their incredible, authentic heart, mind, soul, body. And they're able to really help society and contribute to society in a healthy way. What an incredible difference we will see in this world. So why aren't we all on this conscious parenting train? We all need to get on. If we're not already on, jump on board.
Yeah. And I want to bring all that to the present, because right now the impact is here and now. In your consciousness, in that moment, you already have an impact. You're already changing a pattern. Your kid who is being allowed to be herself or himself is going to school right now, being that person, that whole present, authentic person. So the impact is starting now, and it's rippling towards the future. So it is, and it's freeing.
Yes.
It's the journey that we are here to take. And for those who feel like they're ready, it's just coming really to real life. This is life. This life is good.
Well, the beauty is that this conscious parent train that we're all on has an unlimited number of seats.
Yes.
So we welcome all of you to hop on the train with us.
Yes. Whole world.
And the discussion will continue. I think it's important to point out when we'll be back. Does anyone have the date in front of them?
It's
2 weeks from today.
2 weeks from today. That will be
on Tuesday,
July 5th.
a.m.
Yeah.
10 a.m.
July 5th, 10 a.m. on Blab IM to join us for the second part of Dr. Shefali's amazing book, The Awakened Family.
Yeah.
In case you don't recognize it, here we go.
Yes. And I am just thinking that we started this recording about 10 minutes past the hour. And so we have only been at it for about 50 minutes. So if you ladies can stick around for 5 or 10 minutes, I would like to, I'm noticing that we have some new viewers joining us. I would like to open the floor for any questions that anyone might want to ask us before we wrap up for today.
Yes, certainly.
So if you have any questions, please type them right there in that chat bar and we'll be happy to answer or discuss them.
And as we're waiting for the questions, I'd love to share a proud conscious parent moment that aligns with chapter 1. So my son and I have begun. Heather has a question about how do we deal with grandparents?
Oh, that's a great question.
Take it.
I would like to answer this with an answer that Dr. Shefali gives about unconscious teachers. And, you know, many parents, when they get an unconscious teacher, when their child gets an unconscious teacher, they want to go to the school and stomp and scream and carry on and demand their child gets removed from that class. And I'll not have my child with an unconscious teacher. And what Dr. Shefali says about unconscious teachers, or, the less good ones, I guess, the mean ones, the strict ones, the ones who yell, whatever, is that she looks at them as a wonderful learning opportunity. Now, certainly if the teacher was was abusive in some sort of way, she would not tolerate that for her child. But anything less than that is a wonderful opportunity to learn, and a wonderful opportunity for her to teach her child how that not everybody is as conscious as we're trying to be in this family. And we're trying to be aware of ourselves and to understand each other and to be kind and compassionate. And not everybody outside of this house is doing that. And so what I think she would say about grandparents or an aunt or an uncle or a neighbor or whoever is that this is how we do it in this house. And this is what mom and dad, or mom or dad or whoever, this is what we feel is the way that we want to treat you. But you're going to come across tons of people in your life who don't see it this way, or they don't realize that this is a healthy and helpful, respectful way to be. So it's more about, you can't really change anybody else. You can't change the grandparents or the aunts and uncles or the neighbors or the teachers. But what you can do is fortify your child to be aware that, and to understand a little bit that the grandparents maybe aren't on the same page as you are as his or her parents, and that everybody's different. And how can we handle the ways that our grandparents might act or behave that isn't really in alignment with what we want?
Mm-hmm. I want to add something.
I think that's beautiful.
Sorry. I want to add something because I'm thinking also about Heather's internal journey with relating to the grandparent who is not on the same page. So there's an opportunity there for you too, to understand what your fear is, and put it aside for a little while, deal with it, look at it, but put it aside and find your voice. Find your authentic voice and maybe have a peaceful conversation about what you understand of your child, what your child needs, who that child is, and share that with the grandparents. That can help them connect in a different way. But even if it doesn't, you have honored your voice as a parent.
And that was what I was going to share as well. So you're communicating with, directly with both sides, educating your child about how important it is, for you as the parent or parents, in raising them in a conscious manner. And then, also it alerts that child that not everyone, runs their household the same way or feels the same way. And I think that's part of the awakening is as we're awakening in our own homes, we're realizing where the awakening is happening around us and where it is not. And so, even with the neighbors, we might share how we are raising our children and what we believe, not to shift their mindset, but just to share. Because of course, we're non-judgmental about what others are doing. We're really focused on our own, territory, so to speak, within our own homes. But as they may judge us or question us or wonder why we don't, punish our child when they, say something or do something, and they might, it also kind of awakens other people or doesn't, but at least it points out how we believe and what we believe and how we're raising our child or children in our own homes. So I think, honest, authentic sharing with all parties that, affect or interact with us in a way that may not feel comfortable is a real opportunity for us to just talk about the transformation that we are going through and the different way we are raising our children.
And if I may interject, I just experienced this in the spring. My child went on vacation with her grandmother, And we have very different opinions on how to raise children and how to interact with children and how to understand their behaviors. And it gave a wonderful opportunity for conversation. And during that conversation, I had the awareness of really not anticipating the outcome, that I was only providing the opportunity to plant seeds, only giving the opportunity to express ourselves and to allow the opportunity for understanding. But it wasn't immediate. She didn't end that call with, "Oh, you're so conscious. You're so wise. I'm going to do everything you want." It wasn't like that at all. It was like, "Okay, thank you. I have no idea what you're talking about. I got to go now." And then 3 days later, another follow-up conversation. And then a week before the trip, another follow-up conversation. So every opportunity that you have in those moments is just that. It's just opportunity. There's no value to holding on to an outcome because it can't be foreseen.
Yeah.
It takes time. It takes time to acquaint one another to the differences.
Heather, start the conversations now.
Yeah.
You have a week vacation coming up with them. Start the conversations now.
Yes. And I would start at the greatest need or the greatest concern, and then work down. So really prioritize what's most troublesome to you, or that you're like conflicted about right now. Let that be the conversation opener. Gently.
With no expectations.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Just
Gently.
the process, not looking for an outcome, just an opportunity to share and talk. And however the other person receives it, that's about them.
Right.
That's not about you.
Yeah.
All you can do is share.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions?
That was a great question, by the way.
It was. Mm-hmm.
You're welcome. Good luck on your vacation.
We're glad you joined us.
I'd like to.
Heather.
I'd also like to add to Heather's question about grandparents. I am currently working through that exact question. How do we deal with grandparents? But I'm working through how do I deal with preparing my very sensitive 11-year-old daughter for middle school. Mm-hmm. And that's something I've been contemplating for the past several months. She just finishes 5th grade today, and she will be starting middle school in the fall. And so, though I don't have all the answers right now, the conclusion I've come to is that it is not my job or my ability to pave the way for her or move all the struggle out of her way, so like a lawnmower parent, so that she can have a clear path to get from the beginning of 6th grade to the end of 8th grade. But rather my job over the next few months and then moving forward is to equip her with the tools to handle whatever comes her way. It's not my job to toughen her up. It's not my job to change the world and make it, more conducive to what she needs. It's my job to equip her with the tools to face whatever comes her way. Mm-hmm. So I think that applies to middle school, teachers, grandparents, anybody, any situation, any scenario.
Yes, absolutely.
They're the tools. Yeah.
Just as we seek tools for empowerment and confidence, they need them as well. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that they come in these pretty little unexpected packages too. The story that I was going to share with you was my son and I have begun exercising together every day. And it was his initiative, and I'm happy to join him there, although I'm horribly out of shape and it's been very hard. So it brings consciousness to a whole new level. So as we're, embarking on this journey together, in the past when we would do it, there was always a deadline. 45 minutes, we got to do this. We're going to fit it in here, then we're going to be here, and da-da-da-da-da. So now this is the priority and nothing else is the precedent. And so we went on the trail, we started doing the exercises, and he paused and he said, this one is a no. And I thought for a second, And I said, well, can you share with me why it's a no? And he said, because I feel like I'll hurt my body if I do this exercise right now. And I just looked at him and thought, if we were in a hurry, I would have missed this nugget. But I am witnessing my child having an internal boundary that is so beautiful and so insightful for himself. And I just looked at him and I said, do you know what a strength of quality and character that is? That you know what will feel right for you in this moment and what will not. Mm-hmm. And I have such positive assurance that you will not fall victim to peer pressure because you know what you need.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Wow.
And if we had been in a hurry, I never would have caught that.
Mm-hmm.
It was just
you were being
right. We were being together. Yes. Sweaty, hot, out of breath, but we were doing it and we were together and connected. And I thought, this is one of those moments where I am seeing his tool belt. Mm-hmm. It was right there, and all I needed to do was be with him to notice it. It was great.
I love that you shared it with him.
Story.
And that you brought out, you kind of compared it to, dealing with peer pressure. I mean, I think that was a real highlight too. Brigid.
Yeah.
Story.
He's a teenager now, so I do have that in the back of my mind, but that is my fear. And what I received was the grace of the universe to say, this isn't real. He is solid in who he is. You're good.
He's got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as you made it visible to him, he saw himself too in that lens.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Great story.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I truly think, ladies, that we could probably sit here for another 2 or 3, 4 or 5 days and keep discussing this with no sleep at all. But I think in the interest of our viewers and the saving capacity of YouTube, we probably should wrap up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, viewers.
You. We're so glad you were
we
here.
We will see you all here in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from today.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Invite your friends.
Yes.
Invite your friends.
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.